Captain Jake Morrison stared at the view screen as three massive alien ships surrounded his small exploration vessel. The New Horizon was barely the size of one of their weapon turrets. His crew of 12 looked at him with worried faces, waiting for orders that might be their last. The alien ships had appeared without warning near the Kepler 442 system. Morrison had been conducting a routine survey mission when the space around them suddenly filled with vessels unlike anything in human records. They were sleek and deadly, with hulls that seemed to absorb light itself. Morrison's communications officer looked up from her console. "Captain, they're sending us a signal." The main screen flickered and showed a face that was almost human, but not quite. The alien had pale blue skin, large dark eyes, and features that were too sharp to be comfortable. When it spoke, the translation software made its voice sound cold and mechanical. "Unknown vessel, you have entered territory claimed by the Zephyrian Empire. Prepare to be boarded and processed for integration into our workforce." Morrison's first officer whispered urgently, "Sir, their weapons are charging. We should surrender now." But Morrison did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He smiled and leaned forward in his command chair. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel New Horizon. I request a formal diplomatic meeting with your commanding officer." The alien on the screen paused. Its large eyes blinked slowly. "You request what?" "A diplomatic meeting," Morrison repeated calmly. "Surely a civilization advanced enough to build ships like yours has protocols for first contact with new species." On the lead Zephyrian ship, Commander Vexilla stared at her own screen in confusion. In her 40 years of military service, she had encountered dozens of species. They all reacted the same way when faced with Zephyrian might. They either begged for mercy, tried to fight uselessly, or simply waited for death in terrified silence. None had ever asked for a meeting. "Commander," her tactical officer reported, "the alien vessel is not powering weapons. Their shields are down. They appear to be dying." Vexthala had conquered star systems with less effort than it took to plan her morning meal. Species that had ruled entire planets for thousands of years had crumbled before Zephyrian technology and military precision. Yet this tiny ship and its unknown crew showed no fear. She studied the human on her screen. Morrison sat relaxed in his chair, hands folded, as if having tea with friends instead of facing certain death. His crew looked nervous but remained at their posts, following his lead without question. "What species are you?" Vexthala asked. "Human," Morrison replied. "From a planet called Earth. We're explorers, not soldiers. We come in peace and friendship." The commander's aide whispered, "All species claim to come in peace initially. Should we proceed with standard occupation protocols?" But something made Vexthala hesitate. Perhaps it was the way the human captain spoke without fear or desperation. Maybe it was how his crew trusted him completely even facing overwhelming odds, or it might have been simple curiosity about a species that reacted so differently from all others. "I am Commander Vexthala of the Imperial Fleet," she said finally. "You speak of diplomacy as if you expect to survive this encounter." Morrison nodded. "I hope we all survive, Commander. War benefits no one when peaceful solutions exist. I'm curious about your empire and your people. I imagine you might have questions about humans as well." Vexthala's tactical computer chimed softly. Its analysis of the human ship showed technology that was primitive by Zephyrian standards. The vessel posed no threat to even a single Imperial fighter, much less 3 battle cruisers. Yet the confidence in Morrison's voice suggested he knew something she did not. "You realize," she said carefully, "that resistance is impossible. Your ship cannot escape or fight effectively." "Of course," Morrison agreed. "That's exactly why diplomacy makes sense. We're clearly outgunned, but that doesn't mean we can't find common ground. The galaxy is vast enough for multiple civilizations to coexist peacefully." The commander's science officer looked up from his station with a puzzled expression. "Commander, I'm detecting some unusual readings from their ship." "Explain." "They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies." Not distress signals or tactical data, it appears to be cultural information. Music, literature, scientific data, historical records. They're sharing their entire civilization's knowledge openly. Morrison's voice came through the CUM system. Again, we've uploaded a cultural database to open frequencies. Consider it a gift, regardless of what happens next. Every species we've met has taught us something valuable about the universe. Vextela found herself genuinely intrigued for the first time in years. Every species you've met? How many others have you encountered? Several, Morrison replied. The Centaurians taught us new methods of stellar navigation. The Altarians shared techniques for growing food in space. Each contact has made both sides stronger and wiser. This was unprecedented. In Zephyrian experience, species either submitted immediately or fought desperately before submission. None had ever treated first contact as an opportunity for mutual benefit. The idea that different species could actually help each other improve was alien to Imperial thinking. Sir, Morrison's communications officer spoke quietly, I'm receiving additional signals. 3 more ships approaching from different vectors, Morrison nodded calmly. Commander Vextela, it seems more of your ships are joining us. Perhaps. This is an opportunity for a larger diplomatic discussion. The Zephyrian commander felt something she had not experienced in decades of military service: uncertainty. Every protocol, every tactical manual, every piece of training told her to proceed with standard conquest procedures. But the humans were behaving in ways that made all her experience seem inadequate. Captain Morrison, she said slowly, I am calling a temporary ceasefire while my analysts study your cultural data. Do not attempt to leave this system. Understood, Commander. We'll remain here and await your decision. Thank you for your consideration. As the communication ended, Vextala stared at the small human ship floating peacefully among her battle cruisers. In 40 years of conquering species, she had never encountered anything like this. The humans showed no fear, made no threats, and seemed genuinely interested in peaceful coexistence. She opened a secure channel to Fleet Admiral Kethmeros. Admiral, we have encountered an unknown species that requires immediate analysis. I'm requesting a full intelligence gathering operation. Resistance level? The Admiral asked. None, sir. That's what concerns me. Hours later, as Zephyrian analysts began studying human cultural data, they would discover something that would change the course of galactic history. But for now, Commander Vextala simply watched the human ship and wondered what manner of species faced annihilation with such calm confidence. Intelligence Officer Zaranth had analyzed the behavioral patterns of 43 conquered species during her career with the Zephyrian Empire. She understood the psychology of defeat, the mathematics of surrender, and the predictable patterns that all species followed when facing superior force. The human data made no sense. She sat in her analysis chamber aboard the Imperial flagship, surrounded by holographic displays showing human history, culture, and psychology. What she found defied every model the Empire used to understand conquered. Peoples, these humans were an impossible contradiction. Computer, display human military history timeline, she commanded. The hologram showed thousands of years of continuous warfare. Humans had fought each other with stones, metal weapons, chemical explosives, and finally energy weapons as they reached for the stars. But unlike other species that eventually outgrew violence, humans had never stopped fighting. More disturbing was how they fought. Other species engaged in war to settle disputes or claim resources. Humans seemed to fight for practice. They created something called war games, where they pretended to fight when not actually fighting. They turned combat into entertainment. Called sports, where they hurt each other for fun. Zia are single quotes ent pulled up files on human recreational activities. Boxing involved humans hitting each other until one could not continue. Mixed martial arts combine multiple forms of combat into a single activity. Even their children played games that simulated warfare and conflict. Computer, analyze human response patterns to external threats. She said. The data showed something that made her tentacles curl with unease. Throughout their history, when humans faced threats from other humans, they fought each other viciously. But when faced with external dangers like natural disasters, alien contact, or planetary threats, they instantly united and became exponentially more dangerous. A chime indicated someone entering her chamber. Science Officer Morgeth approached with additional data files. Officer Zaranth, I've completed analysis of human physical capabilities. Report. They're persistence hunters, Morgeth said quietly. The only spacefaring species we've found that evolved from apex predators. Every other civilization came from prey species or peaceful omnivores. Zaranth felt her blood temperature drop. Explain. Humans can run for hours without stopping. They heal rapidly from injuries that would disable most species. Their bodies produce combat drugs naturally during stress. They require less sleep than any known intelligent species and can function effectively for days without rest. The implications were terrifying. What about their psychology during combat situations? That's the truly concerning part, Morgeth continued. They don't experience fear the way other species do. Under extreme stress, they become more effective, not less. They call it adrenaline response and actually seek it out for entertainment. Zaranth reviewed more human cultural data. Their literature was filled with stories about fighting impossible odds and winning through determination. Their heroes were warriors, explorers, and individuals who faced death without surrendering. Even their mythology celebrated conflict and overcoming superior enemies. Computer, show me human expansion patterns since achieving spaceflight, she commanded. The hologram displayed human colonies spreading across multiple star systems in less than 2 centuries. They had established settlements on worlds that would kill most species. Radiation-soaked moons, ice planets with no atmosphere, desert worlds with toxic air. Humans didn't just survive in hostile environments. They thrived in them. Each colony showed the same pattern. Humans would arrive with minimal equipment, adapt to local conditions within 1 generation, and begin expanding further into even more dangerous territory. They seemed to prefer challenging environments over comfortable ones. A communication alert interrupted her analysis. Officer Zaranth, report to Briefing Chamber 7 immediately. She arrived to find Fleet Admiral Kethmaros studying holographic displays with several senior officers. The Admiral noticed her entrance. Zaranth, brief us on human psychology. Commander Vexthala reports unusual behavior patterns. Sir, humans are unlike any species in our database. They appear to be natural warriors who have never stopped preparing for conflict. Their entire civilization is built around competition and controlled aggression. Admiral Kethmaros frowned. Yet they approached us peacefully. That's what makes them so dangerous, sir. They choose when to fight, not the other way around. When they decide violence is necessary, they commit completely. Their historical records show they call it total war, where they mobilize entire civilizations for combat. Surely their technology is inferior, suggested Tactical Officer Vexther. Our preliminary scans show their weapons and defenses are centuries behind our capabilities. Zaranth displayed human technological progression charts. Their advancement rate is exponential. They've gone from primitive chemical weapons to interstellar travel in less than 100 years. At their current pace, they'll match our technology within decades. What about their military doctrine? The Admiral asked. They don't have one standard doctrine, sir. Humans adapt their tactics to every situation. They've developed hundreds of different combat methods and teach all of them to their military forces. They prepare for every possible type of warfare simultaneously. The briefing room fell silent as officers absorbed this information. Finally, Admiral Kethmaros spoke. What is your assessment of their current threat level? Currently low due to limited numbers and technology, Zaranth replied carefully. But, sir, I must emphasize that humans are the only species we've encountered that actively prepares for war during peacetime. They maintain standing armies, conduct regular training exercises, and constantly develop new weapons even when not fighting anyone. And if we were to engage them militarily? Zaranth hesitated. The computer models showed clear Zephyrian victory in any current conflict, but something about the data made her uneasy. Sir, humans have never been completely defeated as a species. Individual nations have fallen, colonies have been lost, but they always continue fighting until they find a way to win. They don't seem to understand the concept of hopeless situations. Tactical. Officer Vexter laughed. Officer Zaranth, you make them sound like mythical warriors? They're just another primitive species that got lucky enough to reach space. With respect, sir, I disagree. Every other species we've conquered had peaceful periods where they focused on art, philosophy, or science instead of warfare. Humans have never had such periods. They've been continuously preparing for conflict for their entire existence as a spacefaring civilization. Admiral Kethmaros studied the human expansion charts. Show me their response to losses. The hologram displayed various human military defeats throughout history. In every case, humans had analyzed their failures, adapted their tactics, and returned stronger. They treated defeat as education, not ending. Sir, Zaranth continued, humans have a saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. They actively seek out challenges that would terrify other species. They view setbacks as training for future success. And their population growth? Accelerating, sir. Human colonies reproduce rapidly and their children are trained for conflict from early ages. They disguise military training as games and sports, so their entire population maintains combat readiness without realizing it. The admiral stood and walked to the viewport showing the small human ship. Officer Zaranth, in your professional opinion, what would happen if we proceeded with standard conquest protocols? Sir, we would win the initial engagement. Their technology is currently insufficient to challenge our fleet. However, based on their behavioral patterns, the survivors would spend the rest of their existence developing ways to defeat us. They would study our tactics, steal our technology, and eventually return with solutions we cannot predict. How long would that take? Unknown, sir. But humans don't think in terms of single lifetimes. They plan for generations. Even if it took them centuries, they would never stop trying to win. Admiral Kethmaros nodded slowly. Prepare a detailed threat assessment for the Emperor. Include recommendations for long-term strategic options. As the briefing ended, Zaranth returned to her analysis chamber with a growing sense of unease. The more she learned about humans, the more convinced she became that the Empire faced something unprecedented. These were not just another species to conquer, but natural-born warriors who had somehow learned to think strategically while never losing their killer instincts. The human ship waited peacefully among the Imperial fleet, but Zaranth knew that peaceful appearance was deceptive. Humans were apex predators playing by rules no other species understood, and that made them the most dangerous enemy the Zephyrian Empire had ever encountered. Commander Vextela stood on the observation deck of the Imperial training facility, watching her elite units prepare for what should have been a simple demonstration of Zephyrian military superiority. 3 days had passed since first contact with the humans, and the Empire had agreed to joint military exercises to better understand these strange beings. The training facility was massive, designed to simulate every type of combat environment the Empire had encountered across the galaxy. Mountains, forests, urban areas, and space stations could all be recreated with perfect accuracy. Vextela had personally selected her most experienced warriors for this exercise. Major Sam Rodriguez walked beside her, seemingly casual despite being surrounded by alien technology and soldiers. The human military officer had arrived on a small transport ship along with 24 other humans, who called themselves Colonial Marines. They carried basic equipment that looked primitive compared to Zephyrian weapons. Your facility is impressive, Rodriguez said, examining the environmental controls. We don't have anything this sophisticated for training. How do your forces prepare for combat? Vextela asked, curious about human methods. Oh, the usual stuff. Live fire exercises, survival training, hand-to-hand combat, tactical simulations. We like to keep things realistic, Rodriguez smiled. My people are excited about this. It's not often we get to train against new opponents. The word opponents made Vextella pause. The humans still seemed to view this as some kind of game or challenge rather than a demonstration of their inferiority. She had explained that her forces outnumbered the humans 4-1 and possessed superior weapons and armor. Major Rodriguez, you understand this is not actual combat, she said carefully. The exercise uses non-lethal energy markers to simulate battle damage. Sure, we get it. Like laser tag, but more serious. Rodriguez checked his equipment one final time. Don't worry, Commander. We'll play by your rules. The exercise began in a simulated urban environment. Vextella expected the humans to group together defensively and attempt to hold a single position. Instead, Rodriguez immediately split his already small force into 6 4-person teams and sent them in different directions. Sir, her tactical observer reported, the humans are dividing their forces. They're making themselves easier to defeat. Vextella watched the displays showing team positions. Military doctrine demanded concentration of force against superior numbers. Dividing into smaller groups violated every principle of warfare she had ever learned. Track all human teams, she ordered. Begin encirclement protocols. Her forces moved through the simulated city with practiced precision. Zephyrian soldiers were trained for urban warfare and knew how to clear buildings methodically. The first human team should have been located and eliminated within minutes. Instead, her forces found empty buildings with strange modifications. Furniture had been moved to create barriers and firing positions. Ventilation systems had been accessed and altered. Most disturbing, the humans had somehow created improvised weapons from maintenance supplies found in the facility. Team leader Kethver reporting, came a voice over the communication system. We've lost contact with Advanced Scout Unit 7. Their markers show they've been eliminated. By which human team? Unknown, sir. There were no energy discharges detected in their area. We're investigating. Vextella frowned. The exercise used sophisticated sensors that tracked all weapons fire. If humans had eliminated a Zephyrian unit without triggering the sensors, they were using methods the system wasn't designed to monitor. Her communication system crackled with more reports. Team leader Zarmuth reporting 2 more units eliminated. Same pattern, no energy signatures detected. Command, this is Team leader Velther. We found evidence that humans have accessed the building's electrical systems. They appear to be using maintenance tools as weapons. Vextella realized that humans were fighting a completely different kind of battle than she had expected. While her forces moved through the city looking for direct confrontations, the humans were turning the environment itself into a weapon. All units switch to wide area sweeps. Don't enter buildings unless absolutely necessary. But the humans seemed to anticipate this change in tactics. As Zephyrian forces moved into open areas, they found themselves facing coordinated attacks from multiple directions. The small human teams had somehow linked up without being detected, and were now working together with perfect timing. Sergeant Amy Foster's team had taken position in what appeared to be a maintenance area. Her voice came through the facility's internal communication system, which the humans had apparently learned to access. Commander Vextella, your soldiers are very disciplined, but they follow predictable patterns. We've been watching how they move and adapt. How did you access our communication system? Vextella demanded. Your maintenance staff left the access codes on a wall panel, Foster replied cheerfully. Also, your life support systems are really well designed. Easy to understand once you look at the schematics. A chill ran through Vextella as she realized what Foster was suggesting. You access the facility schematics? Major Rodriguez thought it would be educational. We like to understand our environment before operating in it. Hope you don't mind. On the tactical display, Vextella watched her forces being systematically eliminated by enemies they could barely detect. The humans had turned the training facility into their own personal playground and were using every system, tool, and structural feature as part of their strategy. Sir, her tactical observer reported with growing alarm, we've lost 60% of our forces. The humans are using tactics not covered in any of our combat manuals. What tactics? They're not fighting like soldiers, sir. They're fighting like hunters who have turned us into prey. Major Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system. Commander, we've taken control of your facility's command center. According to your exercise rules, that means we win. Vextella stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Her elite forces, using superior numbers and equipment, had been completely outmaneuvered by 24 humans with improvised weapons and maintenance tools. The exercise had lasted less than 3 hours. How? She whispered. Rodriguez appeared on the main screen, broadcasting from the facility's command center. Behind him, his soldiers were casually examining Zephyrian computer systems and taking notes. Commander, your people are excellent soldiers, very disciplined, well-trained, good equipment. But you fight like soldiers, we fight like humans. I don't understand the difference. Soldiers follow rules and procedures. Humans adapt to whatever situation they find themselves in. Your forces expected a battle, we gave you a hunt. Sergeant Foster's voice joined the conversation. Plus, your facility's life support system is really vulnerable once you understand how it works. We could have shut down air circulation to specific areas if this had been real combat. The implications of Foster's casual comment hit Vextella like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just won the exercise. They had demonstrated the ability to turn any environment into a weapon. They had shown they could adapt faster than trained soldiers could react. Major Rodriguez, how did your teams coordinate without detectable communications? Hand signals, sound patterns, environmental markers. Basic stuff we learn in training. When you can't use technology, you use everything else. Vextella realized she was looking at something unprecedented in Imperial military history. These humans had treated her elite forces like training obstacles rather than opponents. They had won not through superior firepower or numbers, but through adaptability and creativity. Commander, Rodriguez continued, this was fun, but we're curious. About something? Your soldiers are really good at following orders and executing planned operations. But what do they do when the plan stops working? The question struck at the heart of Zephyrian military philosophy. Imperial forces were trained for precise execution of tested strategies. When those strategies failed, doctrine called for retreat and reorganization. Humans apparently just made new strategies on the spot. Exercise terminated, Vextella announced. All units returned to base positions. As she watched the humans emerge from their positions throughout the facility, laughing and comparing notes about Zephyrian tactics, she realized the Empire faced something more dangerous than superior technology or overwhelming numbers. They faced a species that treated warfare like a puzzle to be solved, and they were very good at solving puzzles. Chief Analyst Morgith had spent his entire career studying conquered species for the Zephyrian Empire. He understood the patterns of defeat, the psychology of surrender, and the mathematical certainties of imperial expansion. But as he prepared his report on humanity for the High Command, he felt something he had never experienced before: genuine fear. The analysis chamber aboard the Imperial flagship contained every piece of data the Empire had gathered about humans over the past week. Cultural databases, military observations, biological scans, and technological assessments filled holographic displays around him. Each piece of information added to a picture that defied everything the Empire thought it knew about spacefaring species. Computer, compile final threat assessment data for species designation human, he commanded. The holographic display showed a three-dimensional model of human physiology alongside comparison data from 43 other intelligent species. What Morgith saw there made his blood run cold. Every other spacefaring civilization the Empire had encountered had evolved from prey species or peaceful omnivores. Their advancement to intelligence had come through cooperation, tool use, and social organization designed to avoid conflict. They developed technology to overcome environmental challenges and eventually reach space. Seeking resources and knowledge, humans were different. They had evolved as persistence hunters, apex predators who had never stopped being dangerous even after developing intelligence. Their advancement to spaceflight had come not from peaceful cooperation, but from constant competitive pressure and continuous warfare. Computer, display human physiological advantages over standard Imperial personnel. The comparison was terrifying. Humans could function effectively for days with minimal sleep. Their healing rates were 3 times faster than average. Their muscle density and bone strength exceeded most known species. Most disturbing was their capacity for what they called adrenaline responses, where stress actually improved their physical and mental performance instead of degrading it. Morgith pulled up the data from the recent military exercises. The human performance had been analyzed frame by frame, and what the computers found was impossible according to all previous models of behavior under stress. When faced with superior numbers and firepower, humans had not shown fear responses or stress degradation. Instead, their performance had improved. Their reaction times became faster, their thinking more creative, their coordination more precise. The more dangerous the situation became, the more effective they were. Computer, analyze human recreational activities and compare to military training protocols of conquered species. The results were deeply disturbing. What humans did for entertainment would be classified as advanced military conditioning by Imperial standards. They voluntarily subjected themselves to physical combat, stress situations, and competitive conflicts as forms of enjoyment. Boxing involved humans hitting each other until one could not continue, and they paid to watch this. Mixed martial arts combined multiple forms of combat into competitions. Even their children played games that simulated warfare, resource competition, and territorial conflicts. Most shocking was their concept of extreme sports where humans deliberately put themselves in life-threatening situations for recreation. They jumped from high places, raced through dangerous terrain, and dove into hostile environments purely for the experience of surviving them. A communication alert interrupted his analysis. Colonel Nick Barnes, the human military liaison, was requesting permission to observe Imperial training facilities. Morgith decided this was an opportunity to gather additional behavioral data. He met Barnes in the observation deck overlooking a standard Imperial training course. Zephyrian soldiers were practicing urban combat scenarios under controlled conditions. The exercises were designed to build discipline, coordination, and tactical precision. Impressive setup, Barnes commented, watching the soldiers move through the course. Very organized. Your people are extremely disciplined. How does this compare to human military training? Morgith asked, hoping to learn more about human preparations for combat. Oh, this is much more civilized than our usual methods, Barnes replied casually. We tend to make things more realistic. What do you mean by realistic? Barnes pointed to the training course. Your soldiers know exactly what challenges they'll face and when. The course is predictable, safe, controlled. That's good for building specific skills. And human training is different? We like surprises? Unexpected situations, equipment failures, impossible scenarios. We want our people to think creatively when everything goes wrong. Barnes smiled. Some of our best training exercises are designed to be unwinnable. Morgith felt his analysis taking a darker turn. You train your soldiers to fight unwinnable battles? We train them to find ways to win battles that look unwinnable. There's a difference. The distinction was terrifying from an Imperial perspective. Zephyrian forces were trained to execute precise operations under predictable conditions. When situations became unpredictable, doctrine called for withdrawal and reorganization. Humans apparently trained specifically for unpredictable situations and treated impossible scenarios as challenges to overcome rather than reasons to retreat. Colonel Barnes, what do humans do for recreation during peacetime? All kinds of things. Sports competitions, outdoor adventures, we like to stay active. Barnes seemed to consider something. Actually, let me show you something. He pulled out a small device and displayed holographic footage of what he called mixed martial arts competitions. Morgith watched in horror as humans voluntarily fought each other with no weapons except their bodies, continuing until one could no longer defend themselves. This is entertainment? Morgith asked weakly. Sure, Good exercise tests your skills against different opponents, builds character. Most military personnel participate in some form of combat sports. And people watch this for enjoyment? Millions of viewers. It's one of our most popular forms of entertainment. Barnes showed more footage. We also have boxing, wrestling, various team sports that involve physical contact and competition. Morgeth realized he was looking at a species that had never stopped preparing for war. What other civilizations considered military training humans did for fun during their free time? Colonel, what do human children do for recreation? Games, sports, competitions. We encourage healthy competition from an early age. Builds problem-solving skills and physical coordination. The holographic footage showed human children engaged in activities that would be classified as combat training by imperial standards. They chased each other, competed for resources, formed teams to fight other teams, and practiced individual combat skills. Computer, analyze human childhood development compared to standard imperial civilian populations. Morgeth commanded quietly. The results confirmed his worst fears. Human children were systematically conditioned for conflict, competition, and resource acquisition from birth. They learned to think strategically, adapt to changing situations, and overcome obstacles through persistence and creativity. All of this was disguised as normal childhood development and recreation. Colonel Barnes, Morgeth said carefully, how many humans have military training? Directly? Maybe 10% of the population. But most humans have some experience with competitive activities, team sports or individual challenges that develop similar skills, similar to military skills. Problem solving under pressure, working with teams, adapting to changing situations, physical conditioning. The fundamentals are pretty much the same whether you're playing football or conducting military operations. Morgeth felt his analysis reaching an inescapable conclusion. Humans weren't just a militaristic species with advanced training. They were an entire civilization that had never stopped being warriors, even during peacetime. Every aspect of their culture, from childhood games to adult entertainment, was designed to maintain combat readiness. One more question, Colonel. What do humans do when they face a threat they cannot defeat? Barnes considered this. We study it until we figure out how to defeat it. Might take time, but we're patient when we need to be. And if the threat is too powerful, then we get creative. Find weaknesses, change the rules, use unexpected approaches. There's always a solution if you look hard enough. As Barnes left the observation deck, Morgeth returned to his analysis chamber to complete his report. The conclusion was clear and terrifying. Humanity represented a threat unlike any the Empire had ever faced. They were natural-born warriors who had learned to think strategically while never losing their killer instincts. They prepared for war, constantly, even during peace. Most dangerous of all, they viewed impossible challenges as problems to solve rather than reasons to surrender. The Empire could defeat them now, while their technology remained inferior. But defeating humanity would not end the threat. It would simply teach them how to build better defenses and more effective weapons for the next encounter. Morgeth began composing his report to the High Command, knowing that it would change the course of imperial policy forever. Emperor Thexalan had ruled the Zephyrian Empire for 30 years, expanding its borders across 7 star systems and bringing 43 species under imperial control. He had never called an emergency session of the War Council for anything less than imminent invasion or system-wide rebellion. Today was different. The council chamber aboard the Imperial flagship contained the Empire's most senior military commanders, intelligence officers, and strategic analysts. Holographic displays showed detailed information about humanity, their capabilities, and their threat potential. The atmosphere in the room was tense as officers reviewed reports that challenged every assumption about conquest and imperial expansion. Chief Analyst Morgeth, present your final assessment. The Emperor commanded. Morgeth activated the central holographic display. Your Majesty, humanity represents a unique threat to imperial security. They are the only known species that achieved spaceflight while remaining apex predators. Their entire civilization is structured around continuous preparation for conflict. The display showed human expansion patterns, technological development rates, and military capabilities. Fleet Admiral Kethmeros studied the data with growing concern. Their current technology is inferior, the admiral noted. Our fleets could eliminate their colonies within days. Yes, sir, but that assumes they fight like other species we've conquered. Intelligence Officer Zarenth interjected. Human military doctrine is based on adaptation and persistence. They don't surrender when outgunned. They analyze weaknesses and develop countermeasures. Emperor Thexalan leaned forward in his throne. Explain the long-term implications. Your Majesty, if we attack humanity now, we will win the initial conflict. However, the survivors will spend the rest of their existence developing ways to defeat us. They think in terms of generations, not individual battles. Commander Vextella activated her tactical display. The recent military exercises demonstrated something unprecedented. Human forces don't just adapt to situations. They actively reshape their environment to create advantages. They turned our own training facility into a weapon against us. Surely our technological superiority provides adequate protection, suggested. Strategic Coordinator Velmarn, Morgeth highlighted human technological advancement curves. At their current rate of development, humans will match our capabilities within 50 years. More concerning is their approach to innovation. They don't just improve existing technology. They create entirely new methods of solving problems. The Emperor studied the data carefully. In 3 decades of rule, he had seen many species attempt resistance against imperial forces. All had followed predictable patterns: initial defiance, desperate fighting, gradual weakening, and eventual surrender. The analysis of humanity suggested they would follow no such pattern. What evidence supports these assessments? He asked. Zarenth activated historical analysis displays. Human history shows no examples of permanent defeat. Individual nations have fallen, but the species as a whole has never been conquered. When faced with superior enemies, they study their opponents, adapt their tactics, and continue fighting until they find a way to win. And their psychological profiles? Unlike other species, humans actually perform better under extreme stress. They have physiological responses that increase their effectiveness during life-threatening situations. What would break the morale of other species seems to strengthen human determination. Fleet Admiral Kethmeros reviewed the military assessment data. I recommend immediate preemptive action while we maintain technological advantage. Every day, we delay allows them to grow stronger. Admiral, Morgeth responded carefully, our combat simulations show interesting results. Even assuming complete tactical victory, the cost would be significant. Humans don't fight conventional battles. They use guerrilla tactics, environmental warfare, and psychological operations that our forces aren't trained to counter. The Emperor stood and walked to the massive viewport showing stars beyond. Somewhere among those distant lights were human colonies, growing and expanding with each passing day. The question was whether humanity would become a valuable ally or a dangerous enemy. A communication alert interrupted the meeting. Your Majesty, there's been an incident at the neutral station, where diplomatic negotiations are taking place. What kind of incident? Reactor failure in the main power core. Critical systems are failing and evacuation protocols have been activated. Emperor Thexalan felt this might provide insight into human behavior under genuine crisis conditions. Monitor human responses carefully. This may be educational. The main display switched to security footage from the station. Captain Morrison and his diplomatic team were visible in the central corridor as emergency alarms sounded. What happened next would change the Emperor's understanding of humanity forever, instead of heading to escape pods like every other species. On the station, the humans immediately moved toward the reactor section. Morrison was giving orders to his people, but instead of preparing for evacuation, they were organizing into emergency response teams. Computer, enhance audio from human section, the Emperor commanded. Morrison's voice came through clearly. Ben, take 2 people and get to the backup power systems. Lisa, I need you to analyze the reactor readings and find out what's failing. Everyone else, help with evacuation procedures for the alien civilians. Sir, one of his officers said, shouldn't we be getting to the escape pods? Not while there are people still aboard who need help. We're not abandoning anyone. The Emperor watched as humans who had no technical knowledge of alien reactor systems began working with station personnel to understand the crisis. They didn't hesitate, didn't debate the risks, and didn't consider their own safety above others. Dr. Lisa Chan appeared on screen in the reactor control room, working alongside terrified alien technicians. Her calm voice provided reassurance while she analyzed systems she had never seen before. The containment field is destabilizing, but the pattern suggests we can reroute power from secondary systems to maintain stability long enough for proper repairs. Dr. Chun, that procedure requires someone to manually adjust the core housing, the alien chief engineer explained. The radiation levels will be lethal. How long does someone have before the exposure becomes fatal? Perhaps 10 minutes. For your species, that's enough time. Show me what needs to be done. Emperor Thexalon felt something cold settle in his chest as he watched a human volunteer for what amounted to a suicide mission to save aliens she had known for less than a week. Lieutenant Colonel Ben Harris appeared in the backup power section, coordinating with alien technicians to restore emergency systems. His team worked with practiced efficiency, as if saving alien lives was routine procedure. The footage showed humans throughout the station, all working to help others instead of saving themselves. They treated the crisis not as a reason to flee, but as a problem requiring immediate solution. Your Majesty, Admiral Kethmero said quietly, they're not thinking about their own survival. No, the Emperor replied. They're thinking about everyone's survival. Dr. Chun entered the reactor core housing wearing improvised radiation protection. Her voice remained steady as she reported her progress, even as radiation alarms increased in intensity. Containment field stabilizing, core temperature dropping to safe levels. Estimated 2 minutes until safe shutdown sequence can begin. Dr. Qian, your radiation exposure is approaching critical levels, the station medical officer warned. Understood. Almost finished here. The Emperor watched a human risk her life for aliens who had been considering whether to conquer her species. Just hours earlier, when the reactor finally stabilized and Chun emerged from the core housing, she immediately began helping with evacuation of injured station personnel. Computer, display final casualty reports, the Emperor commanded. 0 fatalities. 17 injured, all expected to recover fully. Station integrity maintained? The War Council stood in silence as they absorbed what they had witnessed. These humans had faced a genuine life-threatening crisis, and their immediate response had been to risk their own lives saving others, including potential enemies. Your Majesty, Chief Analyst Morgith said slowly, I believe we have our answer about human psychology under extreme stress. Emperor Thexalon returned to his throne, his decision crystallizing. Fleet Admiral Kethmeros, what would happen if we attacked a species capable of that level of selfless courage? Your Majesty, a species that treats strangers like family would defend their actual families with ... with unlimited determination, the Emperor finished. They would never stop fighting, never stop adapting, never stop seeking revenge for their losses. Yes, Your Majesty. The Emperor looked around the council chamber at his most trusted advisors. We have conquered 43 species through superior technology and military strategy. We succeeded because they eventually recognized the futility of resistance and chose survival over continued conflict. He paused, studying the human data one final time. Humans would choose continued conflict over survival. They would sacrifice themselves to ensure their species eventually found a way to defeat us. Even if it took centuries, they would never give up. Intelligence Officer Zarenth spoke carefully. Your Majesty, what are your orders regarding humanity?